Ladies and gentlemen, those that are here with us physically and guests and participants in the hubs, I have been asked by the organizers to begin the closing session. My name is Robert Spano and I am the President of the European Court of Human Rights. I want to begin by thanking quite profusely the organizers for the event, for the forum, which I think in some ways has been a transformative event when it comes to the use of information technology in the era of this pandemic. It has shown adaptivity, creativity, dynamism, something to be emulated. So we can continue to have a conversation during these times, which is absolutely necessary. I want to begin my closing remarks just by emphasizing a particular caveat, which I think is important when judges engage in a discussion like the one we have had over the past few days. It is important that judges can, in a democracy, at least at a general level, take part in a discussion about matters of mutual concern. And within the convention system, it has long been a policy of the European Court of Human Rights that the judges of the court remain accessible to engage with their national counterparts with issues of concern. I want to, however, say, and I say this on behalf of all of my colleagues, nothing we have said over the past few days in the spirit of dialogue between our national counterparts should be understood as myself or the judges of the court having taken any substantive position on any of the issues that will come before the court. It is a fine balance we have to tread, but it is an important balance to maintain, and I want to make sure that it is understood that our discussions have that aim, which is to continue a conversation which is necessary. I want to conclude with 4 general but very brief remarks. First remark, when societies are confronted with threats to public order or public health, as the one we have been discussing, the democratic structure of governance, which underpins the convention system, and the separation of powers becomes more important than ever. The rule of law, which is, as has been mentioned during this conference, inherent in all the articles of the convention, must be understood within that structural context. It is an overarching safeguard against arbitrariness. It is a requirement of clear and pre-existing legal rules, legal certainty, and the existence of independent and impartial courts which people have ready access to. All of these issues have been ably demonstrated and explained by my colleagues, Judges Tim Eike and also Paul Lemons this morning during our panels. My second remark is this. One of the overarching themes of this forum has once again been the importance of appreciating that balance is key in resolving important human rights claims which generate tensions between the public interest and individual rights. Convention rights can never be resolved in a vacuum. All individual rights are contextual, they are not atextual. Now this, I think, brings and is a point just made 5 minutes ago by Judge Eike, which I find very interesting. And that is that the nature of the threat we are posed with by the pandemic is a threat created by Mother Nature, as it were. It is not a threat created by direct human action, like terrorism or warfare. Now, whether that constitutes a change of legal paradigm remains to be seen, but I think when it comes to the contextual examination of individual rights under the Convention, it is an important point. Furthermore, I think it is crucial to identify the angle in which we are examining convention litigation or convention claims in the era of the pandemic. The difference between the state's negative obligation versus the state's positive obligations, as ably explained by Judge Jovan Gilevsky yesterday during the panel, is, I think, for convention purposes, a very important one. I do appreciate that it may be that we in the Strasbourg court need perhaps to be sometimes a bit clearer on this distinction. That is a work in progress, but that distinction remains and is a crucial part of our case law. My third point is that one of the most difficult elements in human rights adjudication is the articulation of what the Strasbourg court has termed the very essence of the right, which must always be preserved. Convention rights, in particular the qualified provisions of Article 8 to 11, which allow for limitations, all retain a core, a nucleus, which can in principle not be trespassed. This is particularly salient, for example, when it comes to the right to privacy, which Judge Darian Pavli analyzed yesterday, but also in relation to other qualified convention rights. There are certain fundamental values that permeate the convention system and which assist us in identifying, to the extent possible, identifying the very essence of a right, values such as democratic tolerance and broad-mindedness, discussed within the context of freedom of expression by Judge Anja Seibert-Foer yesterday, as well as personal autonomy and human dignity, values emphasized by Judge Ivana Jelic. My fourth and final point is that I believe, it is my firm belief, that the case law of the Strasbourg court provides already national judges with a framework of criteria and principles that can assist them in their difficult endeavors in pandemic-related cases. For example, in relation to the right to liberty and the right to freedom of movement discussed by Judge Ledi Bianco. I want to make one point, however, here, which I think is an important one when national judges are confronted with convention-related cases. It is one thing to be ably versed in the substantive case law, and again, let me congratulate the organizers on the guide which, on the COVID issue, which has now been published. It is one thing to have knowledge of the substantive case law, but I would make the point that to be able to deal on a sustained basis and in a manner which creates legal certainty with convention-related issues, it is also important for national courts and practitioners to integrate the methodological approach in the way convention issues are reasoned. Now that, of course, means, and I'm not here saying that national legal traditions need to be changed in any shape or form, but I think it's important to realize that to a certain extent, the organic nature of the convention system requires also shared responsibility. The words used by Anja Seibert-Foer just now also requires not only knowledge of the case law, but also an appreciation of the need to adopt methodological harmony. It is clear that there are novel issues that will have arisen and will arise due to the health crisis, and many of such issues have been identified by participants in the forum, such as in the field of the right to education and public health, explained by Judge Mirjana Lazarova-Trajgovska yesterday, as well as this morning. All of these issues will be first dealt with at national level, but ultimately in cases litigated before the Strasbourg court. This also applies to cases in which states have lodged derogations under Article 15. It is for the national judge to make the initial determination, as Judge Faris Vehabovic mentioned yesterday, in those types of cases as well, and then correctly determine as a matter of national constitutional law, also taking account of our case law, the case law of the Strasbourg court under Article 15, what kind of deference will be provided to the national legislator. Finally, it will ultimately be in the European system of supervision under the Convention for the European Court of Human Rights to interpret and apply the Convention in a manner which is reasonably and coherently in a manner uncovering the collective human rights guarantees that will then become applicable in all member states. My final sentence is this: the European Court of Human Rights has for 60 years protected the rights of the peoples of Europe. You can be sure, those of us listening this morning, that the European Court of Human Rights will continue to do so in the future. Thank you very much.
Okay, it's always very hard to close the forum, to be honest. It's much easier to speak at the opening, to prepare a speech or to say something very clever, but to close, it's always tough for, I guess, for both me and Biljana. So in our region, in Southeastern Europe, this year and since the beginning of pandemic, we have some fatalistic views. So people are often saying we will either have a public health or we will have human rights and freedoms. And it's always fatalistic. It's always either or. And there are not so many people that believe that both are coexistence of both is at the moment possible. Some part of the society and big parts of society believes that public health is only possible at the moment and that we should forget human rights or anything similar, that we should forget all freedoms. However, we also have a smaller part of society that believes that we can have freedom and that we should insist on freedom and that public health is not something that maybe should be prioritized. Yes, we have such parts of our society. But I personally believe that it's possible, that coexistence is quite possible and that we can find a good balance and that we can find a proportionality. European Convention is giving enough answers. So, and I guess everyone who participated these days saw these guidelines that are excellent. And both Convention and jurisprudence of European Court is giving enough answers and enough on all questions that we might have. Personally, I was in this situation once upon a time. That time, Serbia and Montenegro were not members of Council of Europe. That was after assassination of Đinđić, when everyone in society, similarly like now, insisted that it's not possible to respect human rights when society is under the threat, and that some other things are priority, and that human rights are not possible, and we will respect them in 3 months or 5 or 6 months and so on. However, we found a lot of answers in that time in UN conventions and some other decisions, but now we have European conventions that is relevant for all countries in the region, and we can find a good balance, and since pandemic is ongoing, we are still in the pandemic. I also think that our forum this year was example of good balance. In one hand, we have a demand to respect all guidelines that we have from national governments in the region and everywhere. So people are afraid. I mean, many participants are afraid, and because of the situation and everything. And on the other hand, our participants and all of us as human beings are a bit tired of Zooms, of Skype meetings and everything. So we would like to see each other again, to be together. So how to make this balance in a way to protect us, to protect health of all of us, and in the same time to have some freedom and sit together. I think that we find the best possible balance in this situation. So our colleagues stay in hubs, we are here. So I mean, that was the best possible scenario and balance. So again, I guess with the goodwill of all of us here and in different hubs, some balance is possible, and everything is possible if there is a goodwill. Pandemic was a test for countries in the region, for all countries in the region, and I will not go deep into conclusions if we pass the test or no. As someone who is coming from human rights organization, I will be happy that more respect of human rights was presenting, and I think that some measures will go too far, but this is something what we will maybe talking in the coming year and in the coming period. So I think that something can be done much better. We know negative obligation of state existed, and we talk about and we talk a lot about them. But I think there is also positive obligation of state, even during the pandemic, to promote human rights and also to promote dialogue. And it was possible in all states in the region to have more dialogue with the citizens, to explain some measures and to do more in that regard. I think there is still chance to do something like that. And of course, at the end, thank you all. Thank you all of you who are here, especially judges who are us, president of the court, and all judges. Some of you are with us for a long time, for so many years, and some of you are new and here for the first time. A lot of participants in the region who are for the first time with us and that were in hubs or were watching us from home. So it's really, really great. Technicians and everyone that did an excellent job these days. It was really enormous. It was like we have 8 events in the same time, our partners and everyone. So thank you again, and I hope that we will see each other next year, I guess in May or something like that, in much better circumstances. Thank you.
Well, Goran said that it's more difficult to close forum than open. I beg to disagree. I'm delighted and relieved in equal measure that we are here today, that we can say that it all went as smoothly as possible, I mean, it genuinely on occasion felt like leap of faith trying to organize this, but I think we've come out not only alive, we've come out vindicated, and that's a great thing. Linked to that, my huge thanks go to the president of the court, judges who are here with us, and Commissioner Dunja Mijatović. They've been with us and stayed committed to the event since early this year. We initially, as Ivana said, planned to gather in April in Montenegro, and I won't bore you with details, but our plan since went through very many iterations, and we played catch up with COVID, and had to, as President said, be nimble and be agile and sort of adapt. And Goran was saying, we hope we found the best solution in the circumstances. I'd also like to thank all the judges in the region, all the other participants, all the NGOs who've joined us today, and there too, measures are in place. It is not easy to sit in rooms with masks for hours on end. Really grateful for their commitment. There is another audience here that we purposefully did not invite, but it is the decision makers in legislature and executive. And we didn't because our concept is dialogue between judges, but we will make sure that conclusions and the discussions are very much shared with them, because several speakers mentioned today, and I was speaking about it yesterday, the opening speech, when we planned the event back in the April, we thought we will mainly deal with the cases that are making their ways to the court and as a result of the situation in the spring. However, what courts in the region decide upon will also be a message to decision makers going forwards. And so we will make sure that also our discussions are very much shared with them. Linked to this, and this constantly evolving situation, I had a conversation with the key authors of the guide, and they have promised to update it, so there will be an update. And we will also commit to, and if we commit to it now and here, there is no backing down, so I'll say it, we'll commit to working with our national moderators to catalog all the measures and decisions, and then also look into analyzing them against sort of ECHR jurisprudence. This concept that we've put together is sort of rather novel of us being here, the city hubs, and it may be that it is one of the silver linings of COVID, and it may be something that we want to take forward even after the pandemic. So I'm confident we can improve upon it in many ways. We were really making it up as we went along largely. There is no model that we were looking upon. So I have already received some good recommendations from judges here. And I invite you in the region also to really fill out these evaluation sheets, because this time around they will count. We will look at your suggestions and we will probably adapt the format for the next forum. And lastly, to thank profusely to everybody who dealt with the logistics. Honestly, this was a major challenge that I think would paralyze, interfere bigger organizations than ours. And these people have worked over the weekends, they worked till late into the evening and missed out on dinners. So really grateful that you enabled us in having this dialogue with the region. And also clearly grateful to interpreters who facilitated all of that. Thank you all. I'm delighted to close this forum on a successful note and to wish you all a good lunch.